In this episode, we chat with middle school math teacher, department chair, and founding Make Math Moments online workshop member, Shawn Hershey. Shawn recently took our Make Math Moments math program assessment and received his customized report and improvement plan. And he's here to chat with us about optimizing the math program at his school.
This is another Math Mentoring Moment episode where we chat with a teacher like you who is working through some problems of practice, and together we brainstorm ways to overcome them.
All right, John, let's hit it. Welcome to the Making Math Moments That Matter podcast. I'm Kyle Pierce.
And I'm John Orr. We are two math teachers from MakeMathMoments.com who together
with you, the community of math moment makers worldwide who want to build and deliver problem-based math lessons that spark curiosity,
fuel sense making,
and ignite your teacher moves. Welcome, my friends, to another Math Mentoring Moment episode. And guess what? We're going to be talking about not just teacher moves, but leader moves here on today's episode. We are so excited to welcome Shawn to the podcast. When we saw his name in our booking calendar, we both got excited. We both wanted to hop on the call because we've seen Shawn in, kind of from a distance as he went through our online workshop, and we were working closely with him at that time back in 2018.
That was a while ago.
Yes, and it's been great to see him hacking away at the Academy courses, as well as some of the work that he's been doing in between. So we are so excited to hop in. John, what was your sort of big takeaway or piece that you took from this particular conversation with Shawn?
Yeah, no, I was impressed with this conversation and excited afterwards because we jumped on this conversation just to chat with Shawn, just to see how things are going, and we hit record, and what we through the conversation, it came out that he's had such a transformation from 5 years ago into what he's doing now, and being the department chair and meeting with his math teachers, and he's so reflective on the development they've made as a team. And he's asking great questions about how his district program can improve. And he's done a lot of learning with the assessment and the report we sent him on the 6 different ways to improve a math program. And he's on his way. He's like thinking about how the pieces fit together. And you're going to hear that. He's starting to make connections on how the leaves of the tree, our resources, are connected to the roots of a tree, our content knowledge. So he's making those connections, and he's starting to make plans. And there was an aha moment you can hear coming up where he starts to realize the leadership, the trunk of the tree is so important, and he's got to figure out how to wrap that around and help his district move forward. So we're ready to share that conversation with you, and here we go.
Awesome stuff. Let's dig in.
There he is.
Hey, when you said we're going to finally meet you,
I was like, I guess we're just doing an audio call
but here we go.
I'm so sorry about that. It says 2018 through 2025. Those were my goals. I left your workshop and I thought, this is it. So I set these goals. Now, you have expanded my okay, I got to really do more with this. But I was like, okay, we're going to work. And like you said, you got to just chew at it a little bit of a time. But I felt like the most important thing was for me and our team to develop our conceptual understanding. If there's anything you guys taught me, is it's not procedures. Right? You guys call it "don't rush the algorithm," which I use that with them. But I mean, we talk about procedures, and I just was going over how we drastically changed our 8th grade proportional unit by just thinking of open number lines. Instead of teaching the slope formula, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, just like, dude, that makes no sense. But we start right from the table, knowing it's just the distance between 2 numbers on the number line, whether you're decreasing or increasing, and that has opened up access. So that idea, I just want to let you know, I know you guys can talk to me, but I just want to let you know, when I look at this and what you guys, I'm like, I got it. Now I see what they're talking about. It's just not even just that. It's, and the one-off stuff. So thanks, guys, for putting that.
No problem.
Yeah, that is so great. So great to hear. And to be honest, way back then, you know, we like you're saying, it's like the
taken us this
deeper
long.
you go. Exactly. It literally just now we finally, you know, been able to kind of get it all into this thing, you know, we call the tree, right? And really what it is, it's almost like you have to zoom in, you know, and zoom back out and then zoom in and zoom back out. So it sounds like you had almost been guided towards that conceptual understanding, those roots that we call of the tree. And you've been doing a lot of great work there, but then you're probably seeing that, oh, it's not just that there's so many other pieces too.
Well,
so it's great that it's sort of coming together for you as well.
Well, and just the mindset, which is like the soil piece. It's like, you know, we actually moved 12 kids from direct instruction, which is like we call it special ed, if you know what I mean, like our special ed, to the regular ed. And they're actually flourishing. That hasn't happened
Love
in
it.
10, 15 years. So that mindset of like, these kids can do it. Plus the teachers now pushing back on our psychologists saying, no, don't put them in direct instruction. Just leave them in my room. We can work with them. Now just to understand my role, I'm not a classroom teacher. I'm actually a math interventionist.
Yep.
Okay.
My school gave me an open schedule.
Nice.
So I create every day. So I actually go in and push in with the kids, but I also do small group instruction when needed. But so I have this, so I was actually getting in every classroom, like you guys said, where you kind of zoom in and zoom out. And we talked about like how one teacher was doing this thing, but then the next year they're learning about, let's just take integers. One teacher was doing a number line, the next teacher was doing integer chips. So our kids were trying to go back and forth. Now we only have 40 minutes to teach a lesson. So we did have to be a little cautious. And so we looked at like which one was the best, but like the kids were constantly trying to relearn something or a different strategy. I'm not saying that either one's bad, but you know, like you almost have to like, okay, so if you don't, which one's going to be the most beneficial? So we kind of looked at open number line and how it flowed through, not just from second grade on, but the whole way up through. So we were trying to pick that model for conceptual understanding, but
I love that.
Nice.
yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've definitely identified the importance of alignment, right? Across different classes, across different grades. And, you know, something that research has taught us is that, you know, pockets of success actually don't lead to long-term growth for students, right? So if they come into your class and they have success with using the number line, and then they go to the next class and they never see it again, or, you know, it's a different model and you're not talking with that teacher. So it's clear that, you know, you've identified that as an area that as a team, if you can find a way to build in those PLCs or any type of professional learning that you can do where everyone comes together.
The biggest mistake I think I made is I really should have created these goals. If I'm understanding when you guys identify leadership as my biggest area of concern to work on, my district's kind of, you know, the whole professional development thing, they're more worried about behaviors right now. So math isn't really on their radar. It is, but it isn't.
Right.
So
Yeah.
know that piece is come there. So when I look at it, I think leadership, you guys also look at leadership as not mine, sorry, our math team.
Right.
Here in the middle school. So it's like, it's not me, like I'm not the leader kind of thing. Yes, I'm the department chair, but like we got to come together and we got to figure this out now. Now that I think I'm starting to understand these better. So could I run through them with you?
Of course.
Sure.
You guys, okay, good. Okay. Because I think I'm kind of, because this is now going to take us to the next level because we've seen a lot of success. We actually were fourth from the bottom in our county. In our test results, we're now number 2.
Whoa.
So I mean, our teachers are phenomenal. Now, understand this has been since 2018. So, like you said, this isn't. I complimented our district in playing the long game. The idea of
amazing. That is so rare for that to happen. So good, you know, good on you and them for you know, sort of sticking to that. That's one of the hardest pieces when we're working with districts that we find is that it's sort of like, how do we fix it now instead of, you know, taking time to grow and do the work that needs to be done.
Oh, I agree with you. And that's where like with this coming through here, it's like you're getting to that next. So like I created, when I first learned about double number lines from you guys, and I created a decimal lesson. I'm like, ooh, okay, this is kind of getting them to see like, okay, they actually do have importance in real life. And then we were kind of taking that idea, but I noticed with my teachers, it's like a rubber band. You know how like you start stretching a rubber band, it's about ready to break. You got to bring it back in. And that's where I think you guys zoom in, zoom out. Do you guys do that with teachers where you feel like they're getting to that breaking point of like, okay, this is too much, Shawn. You got to bring it back in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Well, we got all of them to actually not use a textbook anymore. So you guys are kind of like, remember how you guys talking about the textbook? You got to know the standards.
Yes.
In 8th grade, we don't even have one. We actually created keynotes. So I was doing professional development right after that because I wanted to visualize that because that actually helped me understand things. But so when you guys then got to the point where, okay, so some of our teachers still wouldn't let go of the textbook in the 1st grade, you guys then ran that transforming your textbook.
Yeah, we ran that.
If you remember, Kyle, I was
year.
locked out for whatever reason. I was going back and trying to watch them. I had to ask you for permission to get in, but we then the teachers at least got on that, and then the keynotes started pulling them back in. But that's problem based because now we had context to talk about, and it's just like cool stuff that we're working through there. So that idea there, where would that fall in? Is that would you say that's a conceptual understanding, or is that resources?
John, I don't know about you. I'm thinking it's a bit of both because
I do too. Like
definitely a bit of both because
together, right?
It's hard to make a resource without having that your own sort of procedural mathematical proficiency, right? So it's like it kind of it helps to build both, to be honest, right? If it's being done well, and you're thinking about strategies and models when you're putting these together, because anybody could put together a resource that's procedural and, sort of, rushes to the algorithm and does all the things that we were advocating not to do or only do. When you're digging in, it's almost like, again, like you need bits of all of these pieces. Otherwise, those resources are going to be really, really, if you picture it like leaves, like wilted and, not very healthy looking, right?
Yeah, and when you think about the six parts of the tree and the leaves being the resources, like there's a couple ways to look at those resources in a sense of they could be in isolation by saying, look at what resources are we using now, and do those resources, do those textbooks, does that curriculum, does this tool over here, does this classroom activity, does that fit in with the learning that we've done along the way that helps with our pedagogical content knowledge and our profession, our mathematical proficiency. So you can look at it like as an evaluation tool, go, look, these are my goals for the year. This is what we want to work towards in our classrooms. Does this resource or does this curriculum help with that or hinder that? But the way you've described it, Shawn, is that when you start to create resources, you start to build in those other pieces of your goals along the way. So that's where they kind of very much will blend together, is that you want to use these other areas of the tree to kind of evaluate, the other areas like the resources.
Yeah. Okay. So it is both then. All right. Yeah. It's like, it's never like, it's not isolated, is it?
No.
It's like, no.
It really can't be
connected. It's all the same tree. It's all the same tree.
Not keeping it done well, right? Like that's the key, right? You could try to do any one. And I think that's one of the pieces, John and I learned, I say a long time ago, we were doing a long time ago. And it was only in the past, maybe 5 or 6 years that we sort of started to realize that, John and I really focused on specifically the leaves in our own classrooms, but we didn't have some of the other pieces. We didn't have the conceptual understanding in order we could develop an engaging lesson, but it didn't necessarily help students understand math. It helped them show up to math class. It helped them lean in math class. It helped them like math class, but they didn't walk away any more confident with the mathematics itself. They just hated math class less. So that's a part of it, but it's like, as soon as you start adding in these other pieces, you start to go, oh my gosh. And not to mention that if they leave our class and then enter into the next class and it's back to square one, the way it was the year before they entered our class, they start to rethink things again and go, did I actually like fall further behind because now, I don't know how to do the algorithm, or I haven't memorized the algorithm like I did in a previous class. So there's so much there. And I think you've kind of come to your own realization that, it is so interconnected. And that's why, we thought the tree was such a great, metaphor for it to kind of represent that connectedness.
Yeah, yeah. That's the other, your circle lesson for circumference with the tile.
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
to change it. Like I had to change it a little bit because, like I said, we have 40 minutes. So there's a lot of times you would love to say, well, what do you think? And you take all of them, you narrow it down. And yeah, we do that, but we have to do it a little more confined. But I did that lesson, but I had to really think when I was talking to teachers, we always just did, just plug it in, right? Just plug it in. But you really were there, like, what do you think? And then you have the diameter there, and then like the teachers took. So I did this with teachers, by the way. And the one teacher walked out. She goes, "I now know what pi means." She just thought it was 3.14, but you know what I mean, like, because you developed. So what I said is, what do you want in there? Do you want the kids just to plug in the formula, or do you want them to see that a diameter, that the circumference is about three times plus a little more? Like, should you, it's like, where do you want the kids? Because that's what you guys always challenge us on, is like, what do you want the kids to be able to do at the end? Just plug it in and put in their calculator, or do you want them to see that piece? Because then what I did is I took a circle and I unwind it. And I took it in the keynote, I made it unwind, and then I just left the diameter there, and then I laid it on it, and then just said it like, it was just like one of those pieces, like, that's kind of where we wanted. So we're really focused on that, which I guess is not the leadership trunk. That's not the leadership
That's
trunk.
more like a I would say, like, that's your one of your pedagogical content knowledge pieces of what kind of teacher moves are you using in your classroom? What kind of questioning, what kind of style of delivery are you using to, showcase the content knowledge that you want students to understand, the resources you're using. So that's more of a kind of a teacher move to go, hey, we're gonna follow the curiosity path. And that part is gonna, we're gonna be building curiosity. We want students to lean in. We want students to be engaged in that way, but also wonder and notice and have all of that benefit of the engagement that leads to the sense making piece along the way.
So our main focus, and again, I didn't understand the tree or anything at this point, but we were really worried about our MTSS process, which I know you guys were talking about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So I have been solely focused on that tier 1 side after taking that course with you guys. And the tier 2, then we were finding, because I was trying to find my role then. I felt like I was in classrooms and we were kind of getting that situated for like three years or so. And then we really focused on the MTSS. So our math meetings when we meet, I'm just letting you guys know, has been really focused on what I've learned on how we help students with interventions. Because you guys had Juliana Tapper on and was talking about that. And I really got a lot from her.
Nice.
So,
awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. It's interesting because, it's a chicken versus the egg sort of thing, which one comes first. And I think, we're, especially after the pandemic, we found ourselves in a really tough spot because tier 1, not only does tier 1 instruction have to improve in so many classrooms all over the world, the problem is that tier 1 instruction won't get us out of this mess alone, right? So, I mean, it's like our problem is even larger now. So, it really does make teams have to pause for a moment and sort of try to figure out, where do I put my attention now? It doesn't mean that we never bring our attention to the other part, which is exactly what you get in that customized report that you received. We're not saying there's no other, parts of the tree we want to focus on, but we do have to pick something to, sort of zoom in on and begin with. And it sounds like your team has focused on that tier 2 as maybe that goal for now. And that may very well be exactly where you want to be right now, but at the same time, we also want to zoom out a little bit and just sort of like, make sure that we know where we are relative to the other pieces and know that, there's work to be done. We will get there. We're going to plan ahead and think about those things.
Writing that down.
Let's make sure that, we don't overwhelm ourselves, because that's one of the biggest challenges or problems that I see we have in education in general, but also specifically in mathematics, is that there are so many pieces that we need to work on. If we just take tiny little bits and try to put tiny little bits together, it's like there's no impact, right? Like you don't see change. people start to get negative. They start to think like, oh, this idea is not a good idea, even though maybe it's a great idea. It just hasn't been well implemented yet. So it sounds like by picking something to focus on, that's a great place to be. And it gives you, I think you had a bit of a realization around the idea of ensuring your team is sort of all in the same place, right? Maybe in the same headspace as to where you go.
Oh yeah, I definitely. When you said about the tier one, though, what's interesting is what I really was focused on them is when we start doing problem-based lessons, we start looking at how we show math visually, conceptually. You will actually decrease your MTSS kids.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? But you're right. There's always going to be that special ed kid. But to give you an example, like this year, what we're celebrating now is we used to have 30 plus kids in direct instruction. Now we're down to either between 15, 20, but we only have one kid in the pipeline for this year in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So to me, that's a huge win. And you guys said, huge. Like it was you specifically, John, that was talking about in that podcast was celebrating those wins. What are they? I think that's a win. It's not even just what the data, because sometimes I think we get data sometimes hinders us. It doesn't help. But I mean, we're given these assessments, but the assessments are for growth, right? So if we give an assessment, I don't need to give you 3 benchmarks plus an additional 15 minutes of this data created from a computer thing that I just don't really agree with. I think it's the teacher, but we can use that assessment, make decisions about this kid, and then have a conversation. What's the kid like? And like you said, sometimes the conversations need to be geared towards not is what's the kid's weakness, but what's the kid's strength. And then we'll build from there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And something that you said that I think is really important as well, the fact that you've been on this journey since 2018 also says a lot about sticking to making goals, sticking to them and following through. So that tier one piece, by helping to solidify the instruction that the majority of students are receiving, that is a huge help to ensure less students fall away, right? And they stop, moving away from that pack, that group in tier one. And ultimately, it sounds like, have a process where you can provide something in particular for students who may need that additional, that additional, like you call it direct instruction, but essentially it really is that we're going to sit down, we're going to target specifically what will be helpful for you, the strategies and the models that are going to be helpful for you to get you to the next place in your journey. And are they also engaging in the tier one, or are they actually going to the tier two at the same time tier one is happening?
Oh, so, okay. Here's how we've refined. This is never easy.
No, never.
Never easy. So what we have done is we separate tier two and tier three from this. Number one is convincing the teachers that they're also part of tier two.
Love it.
So that alone was like, okay, during 9th period, are you guys pulling in small groups? Now I can do tier two, but what we find is, like I said, we have 40 minutes. So I never want a kid to miss instruction. I never agree that the kid, because if a kid comes to me for quote unquote interventions, then miss instruction. Now I'm in the middle school. So we know, have you guys heard of Robin Cotting?
No.
The name sounds familiar, but I don't know the word.
She was kind of the guru, but she's a researcher. See, I like you guys because you were teachers. So like a researcher can say, this is great, but sometimes they never tell you how to apply that in your classroom. But one thing I learned from her, which was cool, is in reading, you have your 5 building blocks of reading, which is comprehension, fluency, phonemic awareness, phonics, and vocabulary. And they work off of that. But in math, it doesn't work that way. And what she said is you have your top 3. So I'm just giving you an idea how we do a tier 2. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to go further, but I'm just giving you how we.
Yeah, no problem. For sure.
So in K through 5, it's single digit operations. But when they hit middle school, your proportional reasoning course, it's all about ratios, portions, percents, expressions, and equations. I don't worry about basic math facts up here when I'm talking about intervention, because we can always hand you a calculator. We're trying to build on concepts. So what I do is, like right now, we identified through our own assessments, 11 kids in 7th grade that couldn't solve a 2-step equation. Well, standard. So I actually bring those kids down in small. So that's a tier 3 now, by the way. So now I'm in a tier 3 because I got 2 or 3 kids in front of me. I teach them the lesson. I break it down to a half hour, but with 2 or 3 kids, sometimes I'm dealing with the nuts and bolts, but then I get 15 minutes of interventions. And so we started back with a 2-step equation. Yeah, if a kid couldn't add and subtract, okay, that's fine. I got your calculator, but we were working on, okay, can you solve? This is where you do your questioning. You guys, can you solve a 1-step equation? Do you even know how to combine like terms? And we started diving back. So I got 3 in my room, but now we're working individually. Hey, guess what? It's 8.5 weeks later, and I went from 11, we're down to 6.
Love it.
So that, and they, you and I both know they need that piece going forward. So that's how we do. And if you're with me, a tier 3 is all in addition. It's either 1-on-1 or 2-on-1, because Robin Conning said, research says 2-on-1 is as effective as 1-on-1 in mathematics, as long as we're on the same. So that was kind of cool. So it doesn't have to be 1-on-1, which was great. And you must meet with them at least 2 times a week to make it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like, if you can manage that third, as always, that can be a game changer. I know it's tough, like easier said than done, but yeah, the more often, the better. But again, there are restrictions to that, of course.
We make it fit our system. That's what you guys always, it is what it is. This is what we got.
You do what you can.
A roadblock, how can we get around that?
Now, she said one thought I wanted to share with you before we maybe tangent off into another area is, you had mentioned this idea of like, I love the idea that you're looking and going, okay, we're in the middle grades. We've got these concepts, we're dealing with proportional relationships, proportional reasoning, algebra now is kind of, algebraic reasoning's around since, kindergarten, but now we're talking about actually getting into algebraic representations and things of that nature. So I love the work that you're doing there. One thought, and I don't know if we'll have an answer on how you could fit it in now, but maybe something to like add to your, like, your wonder list is, how can we incorporate some of that number sense, fluency, and flexibility into that world, simply because simply because
I got you on my list.
Yeah, I love it. Because that piece is so huge, because it's almost like, are those concepts that helpful? Like, say, solving 2-step equations. I know it's an expectation or a standard, but in reality, it's like, what is really going to be the gate? Like, oftentimes it's like, what has hindered this student to this point? And oftentimes it does come up with that fluency, flexibility with number and operations. And it could be something as simple as a very targeted problem string, which may only be like a 6-minute activity. Like if I could squeeze 6 minutes in there, and it's super intentional. And maybe this might be something, John, you and I, we could even do a webinar on it. Is really getting to it. No rabbit holes. Like, when we do number talks, oftentimes people go down the rabbit hole and they're like, here's a strategy, here's a model, here's the way I did it. I did it this way because I just want to be as creative as I possibly can. It's like, no, we're going to do this specific strategy, this specific model. And I've got these 3 problems we're going to do in a specific order, so that you get the low hanging fruit, and then we get you to something harder. And then the next time I see you, we're going to continue that little string. And that can really go a long way to strengthening, some of the work that you're trying to do in those middle grades as well.
When you work with schools on math talks, how do you get, like, because training a teacher for that is also,
it's work.
It's work. Support, work, repetition.
Am I allowed to ask you this question, or am I getting off topic? But how do you guys, okay. So you guys do this all the time. That's an ultimate goal of mine. It really is, like a math talks. What would you do as a first step to convince people? Now, here's the quite honest, I think I'm only now ready to even tackle this myself.
Right.
Because the truth is, when I heard about that, I agreed with it, and then I was trying to do it, but I never felt like I could do for someone. Does that make sense?
No, totally.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, because like you said, I still got to build myself, man.
Yeah.
And you're asking what's the first thing you do when you're working with a team to help them understand that this is a powerful tool to use in the classroom, right?
That is my question.
So, Shawn, what would you say, like, when you think about your teachers that you're working with now, what kind of problems, what kind of pebbles are they experiencing in their classroom? That conversation that you have with them, like what would you say would be like one pebble they have in their classroom that you could help, alleviate, you could help remove? You don't have to answer that right now, but that's actually how we start is thinking about how to position ourselves as we come in to work with teachers and provide them certain strategies. It doesn't have to be a math talk, but it's about positioning ourselves to alleviate that pebble in their shoe. Like what can we help with? Is the thing that you need help with is that kids are not being resilient problem solvers. They're not engaging in the discussion, or maybe they're like, it's so dead quiet in my room, or maybe they're off topic all the time. There's always these pebbles that teachers will say when they vent, right? And when we say, okay, look at, like, these are all things that we're dealing with. Yes. What would you be open to, like, a strategy here that can help alleviate blank? And then that's where you step in and go, okay, well, here's one technique that I've been using, or we could use, or this is the way we position ourselves. And it's really that mindset piece of the tree, right? How do I convince a teacher that that there is a solution to their pebble, and this might be the thing? And a lot of times it's following the curiosity path. It is the math talk. It is setting up the model that we can use in our classroom. A lot of these pieces of the tree, a lot of these pieces that we use in our 3-part framework are answers to a lot of those pebbles that they have, and we can step in and help them with their mindset. Go, look, I don't have to convince you anymore, because this is the answer to that problem. And if we get good at it, all those problems go away, or that problem will go away.
You're right.
So that's the first thing we do. And then the nuts and bolts of the procedure, or the nuts and bolts of the actual activity, that comes later. But the first part is that mindset and that change, that beliefs of we are going to work towards this goal to alleviate that problem, and we're going to use this strategy to do it.
So what you're doing is you're trying to ask people what their problem is, so that you then change the mindset in the soil to get to the branch. I got it.
You got it. Wow, look at this. He's piecing all the trees together. He's got all the
You're
tree.
not telling them what to do.
And then there's fruit on the tree after.
Yeah, totally. It's like science class. It's like there's a cycle here, and I'm loving the light bulbs that we're seeing going off, which is great. And just to add to what John was saying, it's like getting to, like, almost to get them to highlight, which it's essentially, I think you've realized this. You already said it or mentioned it earlier, but we're trying to help you get to where you need to be through questioning. And we want to do the same thing for our educators, and almost like helping to ask the questions that are going to get them closer to that place. And then once they're there, and like when you're ready, and they go, well, like, how do you actually do a number talk, right? Or when you ask the question, like, what is a number talk? Because when I ask teachers, I'll be honest, my interpretation of a number talk 5 years ago is very different than what a number talk is today to me. I used to say things like, really, I called a number talk was like a warm up. It was like estimation 180. It was like, which one doesn't belong? It was like, and those can be helpful if your intentionality is estimation, or if your intentionality is getting students talking and, building math discourse. But when I look at a number talk, when we're talking about number sense, fluency, and flexibility with number and operations, my number talk definition is completely different now. And I want kids, and it's more like the Kathy Fosno definition, where it's all about helping them to see the behaviors of the numbers and the operators through a specific strategy and a model. And the model will be the tool. So there's no calculator. We're not going to do any of this with a calculator. And we're going to do it so targeted that I'm not going to allow the rabbit hole thing to happen, because a lot of people look at number talk as a way for every student to share every strategy in the universe. And there is a time and a place to maybe do that. Maybe first day of school or the first week of school, where you want everyone participating. But then I want to get to a place where I go, okay, I want students to know I'm going to give you turn and talk time, so everyone will get to share. But ultimately, at the end of today's number talk, I want every single person to know this new idea this new model and this new strategy, and I'm going to push you to do it. And the example I use is, I'm going to be going to coach hockey in just a couple hours time. I have some kids on the team, young kids on the team, who can stop facing right, and they want to stop facing right every single time. And it's like, no. Today, I want you to stop facing left. And they're like, but I'm going to fall. And I'm like, exactly. We need you to work on that. I don't want you to just do the thing you already know how. So if a student's going, every time I add 2 numbers, I always take 2 from that and give it to this one. And then now this is a friendly number and I put them together. That's great. That's called compensation. But if that student does that every single day as their strategy, they haven't learned anything new. So the whole goal there would be, I want everybody to have something new. Or if you already knew the strategy, amazing. You're going to practice that strategy and that model today. But guess what? Tomorrow or the day after, it's likely we're going to have something new for you to try. So it's less about students coming to the table with all of their strategies and more or less us building on what we know they've already practiced and done, and intentionally nudging them along so that they see more and more these behaviors or these patterns that are number sense and operations. And imagine what that could do for you when you get to proportional relationships, when students start to see how numbers are related and how, holy smokes, when I did all those division number talks, those are really important now when I'm in proportional relationships, because it's all based on division. Like you can say multiplication too, but more importantly is division. And I can't really get to the nuts and bolts of those behaviors until students have these behaviors over here and feel confident and strong with them. So there's a lot to unpack there, but that maybe is like a mini content knowledge piece. Like if you want to like explore the roots with your team, that could be part of the roots. And then the actual physical process of the number talk could be considered your pedagogical content knowledge piece, right? And then when you look at the resources, the leaves of the tree, you start to think, okay, well, which resource am I going to use? Maybe it's Kathy Fosno's mini lessons books are the resources we're going to use. You've hit 3 parts of the tree through doing one thing with your team. Wow. That maybe you focus on as like, we'll call it, I don't want to say it's like micro because it's small, but it's like a specific goal that actually is going to help strengthen 3, and I'll be honest and say probably all parts of your tree as you move forward.
Correct. I mean, because to deliver that, you really have to know a lot of some of that stuff deeply. When the kids, Pam Harris is when I get on with her, how you model students' thinking to help them, like for them to reason. Totally. Like, that's crazy. You know what I mean?
Totally.
That's kind of what you're saying. Now, you said you can get it down. One of the notes while you were talking, because you asked what my team needs, is it's got to be quick. If
yes.
this is 10 minutes, they're going to look at me like, nope. No way.
My big thing is like, if I can keep it short and sweet, which again, so it means it's not going to be like, there's no noticing and wondering. There's no, like, we're not doing it. It's not a curiosity protocol. This is we want to continue. It's a routine that we want to get into. We obviously don't want to bore students, but the interesting part about math is that as students become more confident doing it, so if I can structure it in such a way that it's not so easy that it's boring and not so hard that I'm going to give up on it, but I get into that flow zone, you get into that middle ground, you start to become engaged, because your confidence and your ability, like your strength, starts to make you want to do it more. And you see this with, again, go back to sports. Students or kids, when they start a new sport, if they're not very good at it, oftentimes they're like, I don't like this. Well, I don't like it either if I don't know how to do anything. But once you structure it in a way where they have mini successes, they start to enjoy it more and more and more. And then that machine just keeps on churning. So I would say, like, building that into your tier 2 instruction if possible, but also building it into the tier 1. Again, you can do it. Like, you just have to make sure that you don't let it blow up into a 20-minute routine. Might start as a 20-minute routine because you have to get that routine down and kids have to understand what it is we're trying to achieve here. But within a handful of days, we can get it down to a place where we go, hey, we're only going to take 5 minutes to do this or 6 minutes to do this, or whatever that timeline is. We might only get through 3 problems together. We don't have to get through a whole string of 8 problems. We're just going to do these 3. And tomorrow we're going to continue where we left off and build on that same skill and build some momentum from there.
That's perfect. Now, let me ask you a question, because again, I'm more about the long game. The math talks I did not highlight, like you guys suggested, as a need right now. Are you thinking this is a need, or are you thinking like, okay, Shawn, you might be working like I still need to get to these pieces here a little bit before I go to the, is that okay?
I think, Shawn, I think what you want to do is sit down with the team and think about what are the goals, right? What are our goals this year? And what are the best, or what are strategies, models, what are the initiatives that we're going to focus on this year to help with achieving our goals? But those goals really come from those pebbles that we talked about earlier. Like, what can we do to help alleviate, but also strengthen our own pedagogical knowledge, our own proficiency, help our students in that way? What should we focus on this year? And what are the strategies and resources and tools we're going to use to help get there? That I would recommend that first to kind of go.
I agree.
That's where you want
to add too.
Yeah.
So it might be math talks.
Then we know where to go.
And that's a great,
and honestly, you might have, like, there might be already too many things on your plate, right? Like, you know, if there's too many things on your plate right now, and not to say it, you don't add it, we'll say you don't add it to like tomorrow's lunch or next year's lunch or whatever it is, but just making sure that, you know, you can only do so much now, and it might be in your mind, or maybe there's other people you plan with, but it doesn't make it to the entire group, right? It's almost like, hey, this is where we want to head eventually, but the time is not right at this moment. So again, it's just like that tree. It's like, you can't do everything all at once, and it's not going to happen perfectly, but you just essentially have to kind of assess, like we did with our growth assessment that we've done with you, is sort of just to get you thinking about these different pieces. And then you kind of look at them and go, all right, here's where we are, and here's what we might do next. Because guess what you do and what the next school or district does, it might be right for them, but maybe it's not right for you, and vice versa, right?
Yeah, if you have too many targets, you hit none of them, right? And that's an important thing we always strive to remember as well. Shawn, what would you say is a big takeaway from our conversation here?
Well, the biggest takeaway for me is everything's a moving part. That tree is growing everywhere, no matter what happens, even if it's just a sapling, like you said.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's certain things that are just going on. The second thing is teachers guide you. You ask them the right questions. That's when you step in to help them. So when you're looking at making differences, or what the teachers need, which is where I need to start, the biggest takeaway, I got to get to the team together and just start. I think that they need to see those 6 parts, that as you're growing, these 6 parts make up our school, man. And we don't need to worry about all 6 parts at the same time. Like you said, I don't want to like overwhelm them, saying like, but as you're growing, like, how's your mindset? Do you believe in this? Do you believe that? Do you understand how to do this? You know what the simplest question I made headway was? Why do you divide your total points or why do you divide the points you earned out of the total points to get your percentage? And I said, we all do that. Do you know why it works? They actually didn't know. Someone was saying you turn into a decimal. Are you really? And it wasn't until you laid it in a ratio table where I was like, you're actually figuring out how much you earn per one question.
Yeah.
And percentages are out of 100. But you can show that in a ratio table.
Yeah, totally.
How do you think, and are you really doing that divided by the total, or are you dividing the total and what you earned by that? Like that piece there is how your inroads came, where we don't have the conceptual understanding we think. I've been doing that for how many years, and I never understood why it worked.
Well, it's you know, again,
thank you guys for that.
We're beating down this whole tree idea, but the reality is like the tree is never done growing, right? Like a tree never stops. It eventually, sadly, will die and be done. But the reality is that our conceptual understanding, I believe, will never be done. And that goes for you, it goes for John, it goes for me, it goes for all of us. So that is, I think, what makes math education and education in general so amazing, is that there is no end to it. and that every single day we can learn something new, and everything we learn as educators, we can in turn use as a powerful way to impact and influence other students and helping them to grow and learn. So that, like, it's such a great way to I guess look at the profession that we're in. Whereas if you really just for a moment, I don't want to leave on a downer here, but if we go back and think about procedures, like think of how limiting procedures are in terms of like the idea. It's like, this is it. Like this is all division is. Like division's this, do that. And then the learning is done. Whereas on the other hand, all of these other ideas, it leads to deeper learning. It leads to deeper understanding. And that, I think, is what we want for kids. And if we can all as a team come together, and, you know, your school being a mini part of this massive team of math educators, if we can all come together and sort of see and hope to see that, that it is something that really has no end, it's a pretty awesome profession to be in.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like you said, it just never stops. There's always like, you get someone on there and they start making you think a little different. It's like, oh yeah, we never thought of it that way. You know, that's why it's neat when you guys bring the podcast people on. It's like, it's kind of cool how they think about things. But man, I can't thank you guys enough. I really appreciate you guys putting that workshop out. Now I'm on there. It's always a learning experience.
As always, both John and I learned so much from having these math mentoring moment conversations, and more and more, we're having more conversations around that whole tree that we're describing and developing that math program. It used to be a number of years ago, we were really focusing hyper focusing on specific lessons and talking about how we might introduce different concepts, still really important, but only a part of the tree. And I hope what people took away from this episode is how important it is for us to pick a place to start and work on, right? And for you and I, John, I think that was with specific problem-based lessons. That's where we began our journey. But over time, like, you have to zoom out and sort of look at the whole tree. How is it developing? What's missing? What's being ignored? And how are we going to address it? It's so awesome to hear that Shawn has some ideas, some new ideas that he can take back and bring his team on board to start thinking about how do we build on the good things that are already happening in our school.
Yeah. And if you listen to this and you are thinking about the pieces of the tree, your tree at your district, and you are also curious about the report that we referenced, the assessment that you can go through to get your customized report to start making changes in your program, you can head on over to makemathmoments.com/grow. That's makemathmoments.com/grow. Get your report and start changing your program now.
Awesome. John, we just created this assessment tool, and it's only a couple of weeks old. By the time this is on the air, it's going to be a few more weeks down the road. But within 2 weeks, we've had about 100 different district leaders out there who are curious about, you know, what's working well and where they can improve. Usually people have a general sense of what's going well, and sometimes they have a sense of maybe what's not working or that there's something missing. What this does is really help them hone in on maybe some next steps and give them some focus. And oftentimes we hop on calls to have a conversation with those district leads. So really exciting work that we're doing. Friends, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Ratings and reviews are so appreciated. If you're watching on YouTube right now and you're actually looking at us on YouTube, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. All of the support goes a long way to ensuring that more math moment makers in the world are reached. And that means that more students can do more mathematics. So make sure you hit that button and subscribe.
If you heard any resources, links, ideas that you want to explore further in this episode, all resources are over at the show notes page. Head on over to makemathmoments.com/episode 223. Again, that's makemathmoments.com/episode 223.
Well, my math moment maker friends, until next time, I'm Kyle Pierce.
And I'm John Orr.
High fives for us.
And a high five for you.